it on there. All right, guys. Everyone's welcome, liberals too. Our next speaker is going to be Seth Morgan. You guys familiar with Seth? Any of you guys? Seth used to be one of the good guys in the Ohio House. Seth was always down there fighting for our Constitution in the Ohio House. Seth did not make himself some friends because Seth Morgan was a free-thinking, sovereign-minded individual. And in politics, that doesn't always play well. And that's why Seth quickly became one of the favorites of the Tea Party. Seth was always above board, always spoke his mind, regardless of what people said about him. So with that, Seth, without a rain jacket, thank you, my friend.
Thank you. I appreciate being here in Cleveland. Thanks for having me. It was Dayton, Ohio in 2009 where I got to speak at the first Tea Party, at least down there, and it was cold and it was a little rainy, but nothing like this. I'm very grateful for global warming today. It's working out great. But you know, as Tom went to Washington and he talked about the sacrifice of the patriots of old, and I won't repeat that whole story, but they were in Valley Forge after they crossed the Delaware and they camped out there. And the stories, if you have not read the history of what those patriots went through, are horrific. Toes freezing off. And they were persistent, resilient in their fight for liberty, just as each of you are. But I don't think they were stupid either. So I'm going to keep this a little short, because we have a lot of work to do and it's cold draining out here. But you know, it was 2009 that I was honored to be the keynote speaker in Dayton. We had 8,000 people show up on the courthouse square in Dayton after the stimulus package was announced. And they weren't protesting just Barack Obama, they were protesting a bailout that started under George W. Bush. Is that not right? And it wasn't just whites that were wealthy, males that were mad. It was black and white, it was blue collar, it was white collar. It was a true cross-section of the Dayton community that came out to support America trying to take itself back from what has become a society of entitlements. And you know, folks, the new war that we're fighting, and you know this, that's why you're here, I believe our greatest threat at this point, unfortunately, is not the threat that sits on the other side of the pond. It's the threat that sits within. And it's the threat of those that continue to take from the economy that once was the brightest shining light on a hill, fed by the liberty that had been provided to us and secured for us by our founders, but given to us, as our Declaration of Independence says, by God Almighty. A liberty that can't be taken away from some stupid politician sitting in Columbus or in Washington, D.C., who takes the liberty away not because he or she believes in liberty or doesn't believe in liberty, but because by taking your liberty and giving it to someone else through entitlement, they then can earn, they think, more votes. And what must stop is that. We got caught in the trap in America of falling prey to those that would take from some and give to others. We got caught in the trap of looking for legislation and regulation that provided for us. We got caught in that trap. And I'm grateful that the Tea Party is awakened, because the new trap that we're now trying to catch them in is the commitment to liberty that was given to us. You know, 2009 was a year where we couldn't hardly get politicians to show on the stage, at least in Dayton, with the Tea Party, because no one knew how it would play. We were astroturf, we were bigots, we were wealthy white Republicans, but 2009 came, 2010 came, and I'll never forget talking and speaking at a fundraiser in Cincinnati for the Cincinnati Tea Party right before the elections of November 2010, and we were all anxiously waiting to see what the results would be. And we saw the results. We took more seats in Ohio than anyone expected us to do. We took more seats in Washington, D.C. than anyone expected us to do. We no longer became the astroturf. We became the problem for the Democrats, but we also became a problem for the Republicans. And you know what? We cannot slow down in this effort. The Democrats have figured out we're for real, and they're scared. Think about how the debate has turned just in the last several months. You know what? We may not be happy with the deal that was brokered in Washington, D.C. As far as I'm concerned, I had this attitude in Columbus, and Ralph's right, it didn't win me many friends. I say shut the government down for a while, let it sit for a while, it just saves us money anyway. We may not be happy with the deal we got, but do you hear the rhetoric? President Obama, who certainly is not one of us, is now talking about cutting spending. They're running as fast towards the type of rhetoric that is coming out of the Tea Party, because they figured out, you know what these politicians care about? They care about re-election. And Tom Z is right. You know what we need to train them with? Getting unelected. We need to remind them that we are the people and that we control their destiny. And right now, we're not real happy. And unfortunately, you've only got 15 to 20% of those folks that call themselves politicians that actually know what they stand for. Oh, they might have one little pet project that they really believe in, but by and large, you know what they stand for? Re-election. And what we must train them is that when they can't be re-elected, that we control that. And I think 2010 was the marker. The Democrats have figured out that we are for real, we're not going away. My concern is I'm not certain the Republican Party's quite gotten it yet. Some of them have, but the rest of them are still trying to figure out what to do with Tea Party Nation. And they think to themselves that, you know what, you have no other place to go. And you know what, we'll deal with that as we need to deal with it. We need to look at individuals who run for office as individuals. We need to look at them for the principles they stand for. We need to test them. We need to hold them accountable. And that's what you're doing. You know, though, to be a great patriot, to be somebody that cares, to be somebody that practices, it starts in our own family rooms. It starts in our living rooms. We can't practice out front at a Tea Party rally in Medina, where I was last night, in Cleveland today, or at the next rally, without taking care of our own business. You know what Tom Z talked about when Washington brought in the experts to train the troops? It started with discipline. It started with discipline of themselves. It didn't start with screaming and throwing rocks at the British. It started with training themselves. And I know we're each doing that, and I'm not here to give a sermon, because there isn't an altar. We can't do an altar call anyway. Wish we could. Then we'd pass an offering plate. That'd even be better. But the reality is it starts with discipline with ourselves. And you know what? The best defense to liberty is our own personal responsibility and discipline. The best way to be a patriot in this new fight for freedom is for each of us to live those lives that we're calling on our politicians to live, that we're calling on our neighbors to live, rooted in liberty. You know, the beauty of liberty is that it needs morality to survive, and morality needs liberty to survive. They are mutually dependent upon one another, and that's what we can start to live. We can also do another thing. We can be serious about those politicians. We can be serious about those principles. We can make sure we don't support policies just because they're our favorite policies. We can make sure we support policies that are in conjunction with, that are consistent with the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. The very thing we have said we wanted to do. My problem with some of the Republican friends, I think, is that they view the law the same way the Democrats do. Just give me a law that I like. That's got to stop. Because what we're about is a rule of law that protects and defends liberty, which gives us the opportunity to worship God the way we wish, to practice our business the way we wish, and has created the greatest economy and greatest experiment of a nation in the history of the world. That's what we're about. And as those founders and patriots of ours marched through the fields and fought those British and secured our liberty, as they viewed it as God had given it to them and no one could take it away, we must do the same. The party started. The Tea Party has started. The party's continuing. We must continue it. And as Esther of old said in the Bible, you know, if we perish, we perish. Who can tell, though, whether or not you've been sent for such a time as this? The time is now, and we've got to continue. And you know what? Just like the patriots of old, we may not see the fruits of our labor in our lifetime. We may not. Do you think those men that died on the battlefield in Valley Forge, or even the founders who signed their death warrant by signing the Declaration of Independence, had any clue that, one, the experiment would last? And even though we know through history that it did, they didn't get to see it, many of them. They had their houses burned. They were thrown in prison. They died before the experiment became a reality. You know what? We may not see the impact we're having now, but I live my life, or try to, with one simple idea. And that is, I've been given this time to do something with. We've been sent here for such a time as this, and it is our time. And whether I get to see it or not, I have 3 children, and we have another generation coming up behind us that right now is already being taxed without representation through inflation. It must stop. It's our time. It's our generation. It's our time to take this country back. I'm grateful to be with you. And as I like to say, whether I'm beside the bus or in front of the bus, driving the bus, or even if my party keeps throwing me under the bus, I'm on the bus with you. Let's march and get this victory. Thank you very much.
All right, guys, we'll make it quick. We got